I go, I go. And so when you say I go in Ghana, that you're saying, do I have your attention? And then you should say to yourself, I may, which means yes, you do. So I go, welcome, happy Sunday. We hope you are reaching your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And if you're not there, you're rapidly approaching that. And we are glad that you have decided to spend this time with this weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, Our Ancestors' Voices. Today, our topic is a tribute to the martyrs, Martin, Patrice, Bunchy, and John. And by that, we mean Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Patrice Lumumba, Apprentice Bunchy Carter, and John Huggins. Of course, all four of them have a particular relationship to the month of January. Unfortunately, our comrade brother Patrice Lumumba was murdered on January 17th, 1961 in the Congo in Central Africa because of his efforts to bring justice and freedom to the Congolese people in that region of the continent, of our homeland. And of course, Apprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins were members of the Black Panther Party in the LA branch, and they were both murdered on January 17th, 1969. And then Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has a born day on January 15th. So we have them together today to talk about their contribution to our struggle for justice. These are our troops. These are the people that we should be honoring. Nobody else. Nobody in the U.S. mercenary military. We certainly shouldn't be paying any honor to that. I mean, if you or your family or somebody had to join the military because they were not able to get any other type of way to earn a living, that's one thing. But that's not the same as people who put their lives on the line for principles of justice. I mean, you'd have to be a fool to argue that the U.S. military is fighting for principles of justice. That has never been the case, and it never will be. The U.S. military is fighting to enrich multinational corporations and to ensure the continued stabilization of international capitalism and imperialism. That is the only thing the U.S. military is fighting for. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. You cannot refute that statement. So thank you for joining us today when we talk about the real martyrs to our struggle. You know, people talk about, well, you should be thankful you live in the U.S. Well, anything we can do in the U.S. is because of people like this. It's not because of your backward cesspool system. It's not because of your racist policies and institutions. It's because our people stood up and fought for us. So we honor them. We don't honor you. We honor them. So we're glad you're able to join us for that. We give honor and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the true native people of this hemisphere who fight for these lands back. These lands belong to them, and they should get them back. It's their land. It's not yours if you're not native and indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. So if you're uncomfortable with them getting their land back, then you just need to go get counseling or do whatever you need to do, because at some point, they are going to do that. And they have every right to, and we are certainly going to help them in any way that we possibly can. Now, if you're African and you stand on the side of justice, it really shouldn't be an issue for you, because at no point in the last 531 years has any organized indigenous effort talked about us as being the colonizers who stole this land. They know we didn't do it. They know that we're in the same situation that they're in. So none of them have ever been asking any of us to leave. In fact, those of us who were intelligent enough and on the right side of class history fought together against our common enemies. Others did not. You know, of course, they were always indigenous. There were some indigenous people who bought and traded African people who were enslaved, and there were Africans who fought against indigenous people, like the Buffalo Soldiers. So there's backwardness on both sides in both of our communities, but there are also many examples of African people and indigenous people who fought together against our common enemy, the colonizing forces from Europe, who eventually evolved into the capitalist classes that dominate the world today. And if you look through the Caribbean and South America at the maroon communities, which exist all over Central, South America, and the Caribbean, those communities typically were African and indigenous communities who fought together against the colonizers. So we know that history. So we honor the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And we, of course, honor our African ancestors, who are the reason that we're here. We're talking about 4 of them today, but we also want to honor another ancestor, our comrade, brother Sekou Odinga, who was a fearless warrior who just made his physical transition on January 12th. And I had the opportunity to meet and hug brother Sekou. He did 3 decades plus in prison for fighting for our liberation as a member of the Black Panther Party and then the Black Liberation Army, doing work for the BPP and the BLA in Algeria and then in Tanzania, and then coming back here to work underground to fight for our liberation, and being one of the people who is responsible for Assata Shakur being freed from the American imperialist prisons. So we give honor, respect, and love to our brother Sekou Odinga. His health had been poor. They were raising money. I certainly made a contribution to contribute to his healthcare costs. And if they were not able to use that money for his healthcare costs, then I certainly hope that the people who surrounded him can use that money to help with whatever family matters are involved in his transition. But we love brother Sekou Odinga, and we honor him and his physical transition at 79 years old. Brother Odinga has been an inspiration to me since I was about 15 years old in the 1970s. And just to be able to have all of those years of looking at his courage and his commitment to principled struggle for our liberation, and then being able to meet him 5 years ago was just an honor. And I, of course, told him that, and he told me it's an honor to meet me. And I'm like, no. It could never be you. I mean, you've sacrificed so much for our people. So we're going to continue to talk about people like that, because we need to know the people who sacrificed for us, and stop looking at these cowards and criminals and these thugs and pimps who work for U.S. imperialism and for imperialism worldwide and thinking they're your heroes. Stop looking at these clowns and buffoons who don't have enough courage in the gas they last passed to rival what our brother Sekou Odinga contributed for us. So know our real martyrs. I remember when it was the OJ case, and I was speaking on a panel, and somebody asked me, what do you think about OJ? I'm like, I don't give a goddamn about OJ. I want to talk about, at that time, Sekou Odinga, Sundiata Acoli. I want to talk about Mutulu Shakur and Marilyn Buck and all of the people who are in prison, Leonard Peltier, who were in prison because of their willingness and determination to fight against injustice. I don't give a damn about O.J. Simpson and Bill Cosby and R. Kelly. They can all rot under the goddamn prison as far as I'm concerned. We are talking about people who are in prison for fighting for our liberation and forward progress. And so if that makes you upset to hear that, then that's your damn problem, because we need to know about Sekou Odinga. We need more Sekou Odinga, less Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, okay? And that's what we're gonna do. So we're glad that you're able to join us for this topic today on our martyrs, Martin, Patrice, Bunchy, and John. And we just start with our brief introductions. Our Ancestors Voices, this program is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Each week, every Sunday, same time, same places, same platforms, the AAPRP. And the AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party that is based in Africa, the national home for all African people, and all people of African descent are Africans and belong to the African nation. And our objective in the APRP is to achieve Pan-Africanism, which we define correctly as the total liberation and unification of Africa under one scientific socialist government. We believe that that objective, Pan-Africanism, once achieved, will give us power over all of the mass human and material resources that Africa produces, which is more mineral resources than all the rest of the world combined. And that will give us the resources to solve all of the problems we have. The people that produce the most resources should not be the poorest people on earth, yet we are. The people that produce the most resources should not be the people who have to beg our enemies for a job, but that's who we are. So we see Pan-Africanism as a way to bring back our dignity and self-respect by giving us a position of self-determination in the world. And so that's what we're fighting for. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which you see if you're looking at a picture on the screen. It maps out the strategy to bring about unity for all revolutionary Pan-African forces on the ground throughout Africa, of which there are many, millions of people involved in these organizations collectively. And our work is to do work on the ground to unite all of these formations into one worldwide fighting force of revolutionary Pan-Africanists. And that, you all, is exactly what we are doing. Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter. And it need not even be said, both of us are active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So to get us started, I will turn it over to Shakura.
Greetings. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate you, sir. So hello, everyone. We hope you all are safe and well. Definitely happy to have you with us today and thankful that you have chose to spend your time with us. So as I want to reiterate, my dad did a wonderful job of pointing out just what the massive propaganda is that we are finding ourselves facing. And we're going to have to work really hard to resist and to push against it. So in case you have not been paying attention, propaganda teaches us that the people you see on the screen, the people you see on the slide, are the people that you should fear. They are the people that you should not have much information about. Or if you do have information, you shouldn't verify it and make sure you have the correct information. These are also people that you probably wouldn't even be able to name them if you saw them. And so this is exactly what we're talking about is, we're taught that, especially if you live in the US, but really any area that has had a hand in colonizing, you're taught that you should honor the military, right? You're taught that you should show respect to your quote unquote troops who have fought for that country. But none of us really have the really deep answers in terms of what the real basis of why the wars took place, unless you have dabbed into increasing your political education, because the information is out there. But if you're relying on sources that don't have good intentions of being honest with you, then it might be really hard for you to find the truth. But if you're finding reliable, credible sources, then the truth won't be too hard for you to access. It's just a question of making that decision and deciding that you want to move forward in a different way where you're not relying on the oppressor to provide you with information that's most likely not going to be based on truth, but instead fits the agenda that manages the oppressor, fits the agenda that benefits the oppressor to keep doing what they do, oppressing, right? And so when we think about that, we can kind of flip that a little bit. And so instead of us being taught to honor the military, we should also be taught that this means that we can honor the lies. That's really what we should be thinking about. This means that we can honor the rape that's taken place. This means that we're honoring the murder. And it's not really a one and not the other. It's if you're choosing to respect how the US has gained power and control, then that means you're acknowledging that they have done that based on lying. That means you're acknowledging that they've done that based on raping people as well as killing people. Let's not forget about the theft of land. The only reason the US is in the position that it's in terms of power and structure is because of all of the things that I have just mentioned: lying, raping, murdering people, and stealing land. That's what it boils down to. And so if you're willing to accept all of that, then you need to figure out why you're okay with that. Because, if you are a humanistic person, if you care about people, if you care about humanity, if you care about someone other than yourself, then you should have a serious problem with any country gaining power based on lying to do that. Because you shouldn't need to lie to gain power. You should be able to be truthful in what it is you're doing, and the followers will come to you and work with you, and they will be with you because they have respect for you. Respect is earned based on your power. Well, your power is earned based on what kind of decisions you've made in your life and how you have gone about living your life. And so a lot of the quote unquote power, a lot of the quote unquote respect that comes with the US is based on terror that the US has rained on people. Um, it's based on horror. It is based on mistruths. It is based on unsafety and threats to safety. It is based on you feeling powerless. It is based on you feeling like you have no say in how things go down. And so we're thinking about how much of that has perpetuated the inhumane situations that we find ourselves in today. I'm thinking about all the people in the world right now who are without shelter and heat in this massive winter storms that have been moving across the world. I'm thinking about how unethical it is for anyone to be outside at these freezing cold, bitter temperatures. I'm thinking about that. And yet, the world we live in, the people will say to you, specifically the people in power, will say, that's not my problem. They should have made better choices. When in actuality, we should all be collectively taking responsibility for any of our situations, because as a human, you should not want to see another human suffer. That should like automatically, that should be where your red flag is drawn. That should be where it is. And if you do see that there's nothing wrong with seeing another person suffer, then again, that's something you need to strongly evaluate and maybe talk to someone about, because not only is that a very deeper issue, but beyond that, you're not in any position to help us change the conditions if you don't even see a problem with the current conditions that we face, which means you are not in a position to help us, because you're probably going to try to defend it if you don't see a problem with it. And that's not really going to work for us. Now, we have seminars such as this. We have other broadcasts. We've invited you to come to the website if you are African and join an organization that's working for justice. We've also encouraged you to join other organizations that are working for justice. So we are okay with the fact that, you may be curious, and in doing that and in feeding your curiosity, you may start to learn, okay, I shouldn't be protecting these entities anymore. And that may change your scope and your perspective, and that's good. But for those of you that are adamantly house slave, I'm going to protect this plantation until the day I die, you're not going to stop us. And we just need you to understand that, because there's too many of us. We're not just talking about the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We're talking about several, and I do mean several organizations that are actively working to dismantle this system, because they believe in humanity. They believe in the people. They believe that we deserve a better world. They believe that humans deserve a better world. Animals, plants, oxygen, any entity you can think of deserves a better world. My mom made such a good point yesterday. She said capitalism is such a vicious system. There is no other system where people would justify you paying for air, because air is a natural element that exists in the atmosphere. But yet, if your tire is low, in some cases, you will probably be prompted to swipe your card or insert some type of monetary device, so that in exchange for you giving money, the service of bartering is that air will come out of the spigot and you can then put it in your tire. And we can't think of any other system where someone would stoop to such a vicious level of charging someone for something that the environment provides for free. That's just amazing to me. And I was stupefied when she said that, because I was like, wow, oh, we got so much work to do. We have got so much work to do, y'all. That's propaganda. And you probably don't even see a problem with that. You probably don't even see a problem with air being charged. You probably are like, yeah, well, they got to make money. No, they don't. Not with that. No, they don't. And if there is a way to make money, we can find more humane socialist ways where that money can actually be equally distributed to the respective parties that are in need of benefiting from that profit. We're not just talking about private entities making money. We're talking about actual public organizations that are written for and in favor of the people, the mass people, to benefit off of. That is a completely different conversation, where if you're telling me, well, all money and proceeds that are paid for air are actually going to children getting bicycles in another part of the world, or sending children bicycle literacy so they can learn why their tires need to stay filled with air. And this is actually going to help survivors get out of very intense and dangerous situations because we're giving them free bicycles. Okay, now we're having a different conversation. But you're just making profit to send to the private corporation that provides the air machine. That is seriously a problem, you all. But the propaganda that we experience every single day will teach us that's the norm. There's nothing wrong with that. No, there's everything wrong with that. And you need to be critical of that. You don't need to just have learned helplessness and just accept it. That is the problem. And once we accept it, then we stop fighting. You have to keep fighting. You have to keep fighting. And if you don't want to fight alone, then you should join an organization that's working for justice so that you can get replenished and get recharged. Because organizations that are working to fight for justice, they're going to give you energy to keep going. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. This is why we encourage you to do that. And you can get more perspectives and new ideas in doing that. You can also increase your political education in doing that. That raises to my second point. I was going to say, so if we're confused now, because maybe I've said some things that have struck in something with you. And so now you're thinking, well, if I'm not supposed to support military and other entities that support America, because she just said that this is about honoring theft of land and honoring lies and murder that's taking place, then who am I supposed to support? Well, I could sit here and tell you, we could sit here and tell you, and we will for the next 39 minutes or so about why you need to actually do more research on the people that you see on the screen. But in actuality, you need to take that responsibility. We can only record this seminar and put it on YouTube. And if you're joining us right now, great, you're joining us synchronously. But if you're not, then you're going to join asynchronously. But it is still up to you to ascertain the information and to insert it into your own brain. That is your responsibility. That's why we say you should increase your political education. That is literally what we mean, is that you need to do some research where you can actually unlift the veil of ignorance, as our comrade Booker T said, and you can increase your information that has been withheld from you, you all. The truth has been withheld from you. Do you understand? Because if you actually knew the truth, then you would understand not to support American industries because they do represent lies, and you would have access to the truth and you would know better, and therefore you would do better. And they can't afford for you to do any of that. Why? Because it threatens their ability to profit off of you. It threatens their ability to function when more of us have information where we do not support capitalist entities. It threatens their ability to manage their functionality because we don't support imperialist entities. Don't you understand how it's all connected? So this is where we draw the line, and we encourage you to join an organization that's working for justice, to increase your political education, where hopefully you have a reading list where you can start to read from some of these comrades. You can learn more about Carlotta that we see on the right side. You can learn more about Amilcar Cabral. And you might even start to draw connections and say, wait, Amilcar Cabral, that name sounds familiar. Oh, Comrade Ajamu and Shukura talk about that comrade all the time. That's one of their ideological principles with the All African People's Revolutionary Party is Cabralism. You can start to identify, and you know Kwame Ture at the top. You already know that comrade, because without him, the U.S. chapters of the All African People's Revolutionary Party would not exist. Which means without this bravery and this comrade struggle, not just because he was a member of the AAPRP, this comrade was the definition of being in an organization. We know that he was a member of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. We know that he was a member of I feel like he was either supportive of doing some work with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference too, but we know that this comrade did everything under the sun, everything under the sun. And so when we think in more detail about what these folks have done, this is why we should honor them. But the only reason I'm able to share the information with you is because my political education is being increased every month when I am gifted with the ability to read from my work study circle. So if you don't have a work study circle within your organization, then maybe you should suggest doing something like that so that you all can start to read more and you can start to grow. I wouldn't be able to tell you all the things that I know about Cabral because I read his book unless I had increased my political education. That's the only way it's going to come to you all. And then you're going to start to get more practice with it where you find yourself citing. the people that you have read. I can't tell you how many times I've cited Kwame Nkrumah because I've been privileged to read at least 2 of his books where I've gotten really familiar with this comrade. I've gotten familiar with his way of writing. I've gotten familiar with how he writes and the kind of humor that he provides in his writing. I've gotten very familiar with that. But it only comes when you increase your political education. And then I can say this and move on to the next slide. We just need to think about how important it is of joining an organization that's working for justice, because the political education comes from reading. Yes, next slide, please. But it also comes from us understanding that we're in a better position where we can actually start to be exposed to comrades who have literally lived the life that we are trying to learn more about, especially some of these martyrs that we're talking about, where we have had opportunities to do work with them. I'm sure my dad will share with you some stories that he had, but in the party, he talks all the time about the work that he did with Kwame Ture, and he recalls the stories that Kwame Ture shared with him when he was marching with King, doing student nonviolent coordinating committee work and whatnot. And so these are just some different ways that we can connect those dots. We also have a new division within the All African People's Revolutionary Party known as the Historical Documentation Subcommittee within the Administrative Committee. And I signed up to do that because I thought it was such a great idea that basically they're asking people to sit down with older cadre and talk to them, get information from them, document things, have focus groups so that we can remember the stories after these cadre pass away and go, and we can still be able to keep their legacies alive, but more importantly, to keep their information that they have, their political education that they have, we can duplicate it and document it so that we can have it forever. So even after these people have passed on, we still have a way of remembering them. And more importantly, for the younger students who are not even in cadre yet, we can still sit down with them and have some conversations and learn and grow. And again, this is enhancing the political education, you all. The more political education you have, the better you are to resist the propaganda. You know, the slide here is showing us Malcolm at the top. It's showing us Muammar Gaddafi. It's showing us W.E.B. Du Bois, and it's also showing us Marcus Garvey. And so these are some ways that we can think about how folks on this slide, they knew every single day that their life was risked. They knew every single day that their families' lives was risked. These people got death threats. They got bombs. They had people showing up at their house shooting at them. They probably had people bringing knives to them. These people understood what it looks like. You know, we talked about King and how he was asked to reject the deacons of defense, but he knew that he needed some protection. He also carried a weapon with him because he understood what that looked like in terms of having gun safety and understanding that the work that he was doing, people wanted him to end it. They did not want him to continue because they were trying to protect capitalism. Do you all see? They were trying to protect the system that oppresses us. So all of these people we're talking about today, they were trying to resist that system. They were trying to dismantle that system. They were trying to take that system down. And I'll be darned if the All African People's Revolutionary Party is not doing as best we can a job of that to continue today, because it really does take all of us. It takes all these organizations that are working for justice. My dad said a saying a long time ago, and I wanted to share it today. I heard him say to another comrade, you know, it's easier to swim with the stream than against it. And I think that's a very well said quote, because it kind of applies to the slide that we see where these people knew the risk, they knew the dangers, and they still went ahead and put their lives on the line for you, for me. They still went ahead and they did it. I just told you they had death threats. I just told you they had house bombings. I just told you they had car bombings. They probably had people showing up at the child's school trying to cause damage and danger. Like, they had all of these situations where they had to make critical decisions for the safety of themselves and their families every single moment. Every single moment. And they still found a way to do it because that's what it took, because it is easier to swim with the stream than against it. That means if you understand that resistance is the only way to dismantle capitalism, that means that you're going to be challenged and you're going to have to work harder, because you want to work harder by swimming against the stream that is pushing you out, because the stream represents the oppressive system. And they understood that. There's another saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And these comrades understood we don't have a choice. Our people need us. Our people are suffering everywhere. I'll never forget when I read the first couple of sentences of Garvey and Garveyism, and shout out to our comrade Amy Jocks for writing that book for him. But we remember him saying, I saw the same patterns in Jamaica. I saw the same patterns in the US. I went to Canada and I saw the same patterns. Everywhere I went, African people were at the bottom. They were impoverished. They were unhealthy. They had serious conditions that were not getting them the support that they needed. Why is this? He said. And he wanted to understand more about why we were struggling everywhere, why we were struggling. That's because we understand that we needed to stand for something so that we could make a change and have it be a different outcome. So as I close to pass it back to my dad, I remind you all that it is so easy for you to say nothing. It is so easy for you to be a bystander. And if you're not ready to join an organization that's working for justice, we understand. We're not sure why there has not been a push, because you can at least check the organization out, go to a meeting and check it out. But for whatever reason, if you're not ready to commit, I guess we could be down with that, but you still have a responsibility to the people either way. So even if you're not physically doing the work that needs to be done, we strongly need your support in a physical way. Maybe you donate a case of water. Maybe you donate some curriculum. Maybe you donate monetary stuff. Maybe you buy pencils and donate it to the breakfast program that exists for the children. Whatever you're doing, we need you to do something. And you can at least join an organization and increase your political education. But if you can't even do that, maybe you can donate money so that other people can buy books to increase their political education. Because we cannot achieve one unified socialist Africa if we don't have the knowledge that we're missing. And we don't know that we're missing the knowledge because we're not humble enough to understand that the lies that we've been taught are not going to get us where we need to be. So we have to humble ourselves, understand that there is a lot of information out there that we simply do not know. And once we understand that, we can open our brains up to be the sponge that we needed to be and to absorb it. They say the more you know, the less you know. I cannot tell you how true that is. But it feels good to be connected to my continent and my homeland of Mother Africa. Ashe.
Ashe, Asante Sana, Obrigada. Thank you very much, Shakura. And I just, the saying, actually, I can't claim credit for that saying. The saying was provided to me by an older comrade at home in Africa, one of the times that I was there doing AAPRP work. And it was so long ago, I don't even remember where I was. But what they actually said is someone was saying how hard it is to get people to stand up for truth. And this comrade responded to that by saying, well, even a dead fish can swim with the current. Meaning, it doesn't take anything to go along with the flow. It doesn't take anything to go along with the capitalist system. That's easy. Anybody could do that. That was the point that the comrade was making. Whereas to stand up and go against the grain, that's where you find out the true character of people. That's where you find out that you have somebody that's worth dealing with. And when we think about people like Apprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, without question, they fit that mold, right? We know that the Black Panther Party was not perfect. No organization is perfect. We know that the Black Panther Party, in a critical lens, did not have a consistent and in-depth political education program. They did not have that. And that opened the way for a lot of the sabotage that happened within the Black Panther Party. But even though those errors on behalf of the party, and that's not my opinion. I mean, if you study all of the assessments of the Black Panther Party that were provided by the people who organized within the party, they've all told you that. If you study, I've studied all of them. I've read all of the books that they wrote. I read the book that Elaine Brown wrote, A Taste of Power. She makes that argument. Geronimo Gijaga makes it in Last Man Standing. Bobby Seale makes it in his book. Even Huey P. Newton, in the book he wrote in the 70s, To Die for the People, makes the argument. Kwame Ture, without question, makes the argument in his book, Ready for the Revolution. And, you know, virtually every other Florence Forbes, David Hilliard, this side of Glory, they all make that argument. Asada probably makes the argument better than anyone else. Asada Shakur, when she makes the argument in her book, Asada, she makes that point about political education clear. So, but even though that's without question an error and a shortcoming within the Black Panther Party, that does nothing to change the fact that their demise just didn't happen on a whim. It happened because the US government systemically and in an organized fashion targeted the Black Panther Party and engaged in a horrific campaign of terror against them. From 1967 to 1971, the Federal Bureau of Investigation engaged in 267 separate acts of sabotage against the Black Panther Party. And by acts, we mean breaking into the places where people lived and planting evidence and then coming back to arrest the people, spreading lies and misinformation to the jobs these people worked at to sabotage their ability to earn a living to support their families, engaging in bad jacketing behavior, where what the FBI would do is they would accuse you of something that they knew you didn't do to your comrade. So it would create an atmosphere of mistrust. And in fact, the deaths of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins on January 17th, 1969 resulted specifically from this type of bad jacketing activity on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Our enemies study us. We don't study them, but they study us. You know, so they knew then that the Black Panther Party had recruited from a number of street organizations in Los Angeles, and that the US organization of Dr. Maulana Karenga, the African that founded the Kwanzaa holiday, his organization is the US organization. If you don't know, the US organization has been around since 1966, the year Karenga founded the Kwanzaa holiday. And the philosophy of the US organization is that African people need a cultural renaissance to our African culture. So they created the Kwanzaa holiday as a vehicle and an institution from their perspective to permit us to do that. So what happened, what the FBI did is they engaged in a campaign where they sent letters to Maulana Karenga, and they erroneously indicated that those letters were coming from Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, co-founders of the Black Panther Party, from Bunchy Carter, the leader of the LA branch of the Black Panther Party, and John Huggins. And the letters were threats against the US organization. And in return, they sent the same types of letters to Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, allegedly from Maulana Karenga. And these letters contain, vicious threats and mockeries and people talking terribly about people talking terribly about the people that people were involved with romantically and making threats about, raping these people and killing them. And so, it was designed to create anger and antagonism among the groups. And it was successful. It was successful because this power struggle that was allegedly taking place on the UCLA campus around who would control the emerging quote unquote Black Studies program was really, in our estimation, not the real issue. Some revisionist history has said, well, they were arguing over control of that, and it was the Panthers against us. But we know that deeper than that was the antagonisms that the FBI instigated, which created the bad blood in the first place, so that it was easy for that line to be crossed. And whether it was actually people from the US organization who pulled the triggers and killed Bunchy and John Huggins on that day, we know that the FBI bought the bullets, no matter who it was that actually pulled the trigger and did that. And that the antagonisms that were created between the two organizations were real and still exist to this day to people who have survived and are still here among us who were around during that time. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do is talk to them, and you'll see that instantly. So this is how they sabotage us, and that's why we constantly go back to political education, because that is the serum that prepares us and properly positions us to deal with these attacks. But none of that takes away from the courage of Bunchy Carter, who was a former member of the Slossons. Before you had the Bloods and the Crips in LA, you had African street organizations like the Slossons, like the Businessmen, like all of these different types of organizations. And the reason why those organizations existed in the 1950s in Los Angeles is because as African people left Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, to come to California, we were met with vicious racism on the part of the people who were here in California. And there was a white gang started in Compton and South LA called the Spook Hunters. And so these other organizations like the Businessmen, the Gladiators, they started to protect the African community in South LA, Watts, Compton against these white terrorists. And the Slossons were a part of that. And then once a white flight happened and the jobs left, the production jobs from places like Firestone, they left South LA. Now you had nothing left but overcrowding of African people in these areas and no jobs. And so this intensified the antagonism. And so these organizations began to be antagonistic against each other. But Bunchy wanted to change that. So he brought the Slosson members, large numbers of them, into the LA branch of the Black Panther Party. And John Huggins, along with his wife, Erica Huggins, who is still a very active, just participated in one of the Black Panther Party events in Oakland last weekend. They were critical to the development of the LA branch of the Black Panther Party and its work among our people. So these two Africans who were murdered on that day in 1969, January 17th, are heroes that we should acknowledge, and we should thank them for their service, and we should educate our children about them and tell them these are the people that you should honor and respect. We ain't honoring no goddamn Colin Powell and none of these people that wage war against humanity with a U.S. military uniform on. You got to be out of your mind. We're not honoring a bunch of terrorists. We don't even acknowledge terrorists. We honor the people who stood up and risked their lives for what's right. If you have free breakfast, you have a child that has free breakfast or lunch in school today, it is because of the Black Panther Party that the school systems do this today. They weren't doing it before the Black Panther Party started doing it. The FBI encouraged school districts to start doing those programs to undermine the work of the Black Panther Party. If you have the ability to get sickle cell anemia testing, dental services in low-income neighborhoods, all of those things the Black Panther Party started. So we should honor them. People like Bunchy and John and all of the Panthers who lost their lives, you all, because they wanted a better life for us. They didn't get anything out of it. There was no money that came to their families. They got nothing out of this. Talk to Erica Huggins. She didn't win any settlement when the pig structure killed her husband. So we have to support the people who make these kind of sacrifices for us. So we honor Bunchy and John. And we know that when it comes to the imperialist system, we can't be confused about this at all. Patrice Lumumba represented a serious threat to the capitalist imperialist system in the world today. Because when he was elected on June 30th, 1960, to be prime minister of the Congo, he immediately talked about the necessity to nationalize the Congo's vast resources, the most resource area on the entire planet. And he talked about that. And at that time, atomic power was there's so many resources. Today it's cobalt. Today it's arable land. It's hydroelectric power. But back in 1960, the main thing everybody was after in the Congo was uranium to build atomic power, because that's how you make nuclear weapons. And the Soviet Union wanted nuclear weapons. The Warsaw Pact and the United Snakes of America wanted nuclear weapons, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And the only way you could build them was by having access to this uranium. And the Congo had, at that time, the world's largest untapped reserves of uranium. And here comes this 30-something-year-old African talking about, yeah, we're going to control that. We're not going to let these Union Mineral and all these European capitalist corporations control our resources and keep our people in poverty. And so at that time, it was clear he had to go. And that led to his assassination and the destabilization of the Congo that still exists as we're talking right now. It still exists because the hunt for those resources is still going on, you all. It's still going on because even though we're confused and we think the only thing that we can live for is begging these crackers for jobs here, our enemies understand that their wealth comes from stealing our African resources. They know that even though we don't know that. We run around here talking about, I'm Native American. I'm Native American. I'm Israelite. I'm an American Negro. I'm a coon. I'm whatever, everything except what I really am, an African. We running around with all that confusion. And every time we do that, our enemies are so thankful because they're like, oh, as long as we can keep these fools from understanding their connection to Africa, we can still keep stealing all these resources. We can still continue to be rich, and we can still continue to maintain our dominance over the world as we've done for the last couple of 100 years. Well, Patrice Lumumba was one of those Africans that didn't fall for that okie doke, and he understood that the liberation of Africa was key to us solving all of the problems that we have. And that is the reason why they hunted him down and they murdered that man. They shot him and killed him, cut his hands off, dissolved his body in acid in order to destroy the evidence. And your Central Intelligence Agency, the criminals in action, the CIA in this country, was the chief source that facilitated the process to murder Patrice Lumumba. That is the reason why he's not here today. That is the sole reason why he's not here. And because of that, he deserves our honor and respect. Shakura is my only child on here, and she can tell you from the moment she could speak English, she understood about Bunchy Carter, not everything because she was a child and just grasping, but she was constantly being talked to about the Bunchy Carters of the world, the John Huggins, the Patrice Lumumbas, the Amy Jock Garveys, the Assata Shakurs, the Patrice Lumumbas, the Martin Luther Kings. She was constantly talked to about that. We didn't expose her to any of these coon celebrities. We knew she would find out about them soon enough. We didn't need to talk about them. We knew you all would do that for us, but we knew that our job was to make sure she was educated about the people who deserve our respect. And without question, Patrice Lumumba was high on that list, as was Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And the reason, just like Patrice Lumumba, the reason why Dr. King is not here any longer was not because he was talking about black kids and white kids holding hands together and singing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. That's not why they killed the man. They killed the man because human consciousness moves, you all. It doesn't stand still. And Martin Luther King was a man of conscience and a man of dignity and integrity. And because of that, anybody who has integrity, those of you that don't have integrity, what I'm about to say will go right over your head. But those of you who do have integrity, you know that when you have a concern about whether what you're doing is morally correct, it will bother the hell out of you. And Martin Luther King was that kind of person. So even though he had this principle of nonviolence, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was pushing him. Even though he didn't want to get involved with talking about the war in Vietnam, SNCC was pushing him. And they knew he was a man of principle. That's why they were pushing him. You think they were pushing Roy Wilkins from the NAACP? You think they were pushing Whitney Young from the Urban League? They didn't bother with those Negro coons. They knew they weren't going to move them. But they knew Dr. King was a man of principle. So they struggled with him. They pushed him. And they pushed Dr. Martin Luther King to take a position, an anti-imperialist position against the Vietnam War. These people today don't want you to know that. They want you to think all he wanted was little white kids and black kids sitting around. He didn't give a goddamn about little black kids and white kids sitting around a table if they didn't have food to put on the damn table. He was concerned about justice in the world today. And that's why this very government that wants you to believe they celebrate him the third week of January every year are the same people who killed him and put him in his grave. And that's irrefutable. This government did that. Just like they killed Lumumba, just like they killed John, just like they killed Bunchy, just like they killed everybody that stood up against them and they were able to kill or discredit or get you not to listen to. That's what they did to Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King. Like Shakur said, he was a man of principle. That's why he's not here today. So we're not going to let them change his image into some kind of soft pancake, whipped cream, get along with everybody, beat the hell out of me, I'll just smile. That wasn't Dr. King. Dr. King was a fearless man who stood on morality and justice. And he had a following. And you all, if you're serious about Dr. King, you got to study Dr. Martin Luther King. Because Dr. Martin Luther King wasn't like you all today. He didn't just go vote for cracker number one over cracker number two. He built a movement because he understood that we can't trust none of these crackers or wannabe crackers or wish they could be crackers or trying to be crackers or hoping I wake up a cracker tomorrow. He knew we couldn't trust none of these people. So what he did was build a movement and engage that movement and use that movement to hold these backward capitalists accountable to reform their system for us. That's why you got the Voting Rights Act. That's why you got the Civil Rights Act. That's why you got the Immigration Reform Act. It was because of that movement. And now today you're getting nothing. You're getting nothing like none of those things. And it's because you refuse to accept the reality that you cannot convince a thinking person that all you have to do is vote in the enemy system, and that somehow it's going to change the power dynamic and give us what we need. We've been doing that for 60 years, and we have absolutely nothing to show for it. So don't leave here and say, well, he told us not to vote. I don't care whether you vote or not. I'm telling you, if you're going to do that, you have to be a part of the movement. You have to have an organization. You have to build capacity to make these people accountable to you. You can't just vote for them. You voted for Joe Biden. You have nothing to show for voting for him today. Nothing whatsoever. We're still, don't tell me about those little lightweight policies that saved you $5 today, so that, but then next year when somebody else is in there, they're going to charge you $10. I don't want to hear about that. That's an insult to my intelligence. There is no change in mass incarceration. There is no change in police terrorism. There is no change in poverty and houselessness. These are the things that matter. I don't want to talk about no $5. He signed a bill for you to get $5 back today, and then next year you got to pay $20. You got to be insane to try to convince those of us who are thinking people that that's something we should get excited about. So that's why we talk about these folks who made the ultimate sacrifice, because they were able to understand the necessity to think outside the box and to realize that life is nothing if it's not a life based on principle. You're not even living if you're not living a life based on principle. So what we have to learn from all of that is that our struggle can never be about individual leaders. We're not talking to you about these 4 Africans because they're great individual leaders, but the fact that all of them, all 4 of them were shot and killed by our enemies. The fact that that's true, and we could sit here and name a whole bunch more. We showed you a bunch more in the earlier slides. El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, right? Muammar Gaddafi. We showed you Matulu Shakur, who was in prison 36 years by our enemy. We showed you Nina Simone, whose career was sabotaged because of speaking out for justice. We showed you W.B. Du Bois, who had to leave this backward country and move to Ghana because of the terrorist efforts the country named in him. And of course, the sabotage against Marcus Mosiah Garvey is well documented. So it can't be about individual leaders because it's too easy for them to isolate individual leaders. And most of you all will believe whatever they tell you about the individual leaders. So that cannot be the route that we take. Instead, we have to have mass collective cadre power everywhere. We have to develop everybody So you can no longer escape by hiding behind, we need more leaders. No, you become a leader. Everybody has to become a leader. In the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we have cadre development. Our cadre are the leadership. We don't have one leader. Even when Kwame Ture was alive, he was not the leader of the people. He's the chairman. We don't have a chairman. We've never had a chairman. We have a central committee. We have a coordinating committee that anybody can run in as long as you meet the criteria as a member. And that's who we need, because they cannot kill all of us. They cannot co-opt all of us. And our martyrs gave us this ability to figure this out. They gave us all of the tools to improve our ability to fight back in a much better organized fashion. Because no matter who you are or what you think, the bottom line always comes back to this. What Frantz Fanon said, who's in the picture there. Each generation has a mission. Your job to either fulfill or betray that mission. It's just that simple, you all. You can make whatever excuses you want, but the bottom line is that you're either going to do what you were put here on earth to do, or you're not. You're just going to do whatever you want to do for yourself. And that's fine. We're not going to sit here and waste time arguing with you. You're not worth it. But when the police pull you over at 2 a.m., then just remember that. Keep that same energy. Don't call organizations to come help you. Deal with it yourself. When you're out in the darkness with the police, deal with it yourself. When the white supremacists catch you because you refuse to get prepared for anything like that, just deal with it yourself. Don't call us. Don't call us to come. You don't believe in organization. Just deal with it yourself. You know, as Kwame Ture said, at least if the neo-Nazis kill you, if you're not willing to live for our people, at least die for us. Call them up today and say, hey, white supremacists, I'm not going to do anything to help my people. So when you all get ready to lynch one of us, let me give you my address. At least do that. If you're not going to do anything to help us as a collective move forward, because these people made the ultimate sacrifice. All of these people that we've talked about today, and many others we didn't have time to talk about. So we have an obligation. We can't pay them back. They're all gone, but we certainly can pay it forward. And that's exactly what we intend to do. We are inspired by them to do that, and we are honored to have the opportunity to do that. So we thank you for joining us today, and we certainly invite you back next week. Same time, same place. We're going to tackle a topic that really has never really been addressed to my knowledge, and that was Kwame Nkrumah assassinated. You know, the official cause of his death was prostate cancer, but we're gonna challenge that next week. So we certainly encourage you to join us. The QR code at the top left, you can get all of the APRP programs that Shakura mentioned. You can go to the Forward Ever shop and buy clothing that reflects our revolutionary African messaging. Please do that. Support Hood Communist, the blog. I think I still have an article up about the Congo I wrote last week there. But no matter if I have it or you write one or whoever writes it, support independent revolutionary voices, and Hood Communist is the place to do that. Betterworld.me will have this video and all the other videos up there. You can get them, share them. And again, we want to say rest in power to our comrade, brother Sekou Odinga, who made his physical transition a few short days ago. We are honored for his sacrifice, and we just live to continue the foundation of the struggle he laid for us. Assata Shakur would not be free in Cuba without the contributions of this wonderful African man. So we hope you rest in power. You have certainly earned it, brother Sekou Odinga. And we ask you to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Go to www.aprp-intl.org. Support Burkina Books, the QR code in the bottom right, our project on the ground for the APRP in Burkina Faso, and my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. I have to go out of state again to help do some organizing work, some anti-fascist organizing work. I pay for my gas from proceeds from this book. Plus, the book is a good book. So if you have it already, buy some more or tell some people about it. We can't afford no advertising on Amazon. So you be our advertiser. Let people know, hey, it's a great book. Check it out. do a reading circle around it, a political education circle around it. Y'all know how it goes. So we appreciate each and every one of you. We invite you back next week, invite you to all of our programs. Please get engaged. We hope that you have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. And the best way you can serve all of these people we've talked about today, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Patrice Lumumba, Apprentice Bunchy Carter, John Huggins, Sekou Odinga. The best way to honor them, you all, is to continue their work. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening.